Aiden, the Swans have shown weakness and the Premiership is back up for grabs. Of course, we're going to get through our usual segments, but we're going to just start off with a discussion about what's gone wrong. I wasn't at the game today, but you were. Tell me, what was it like being in the ground?
Well, the first quarter was almost expectation because we've seen... I went through it. We've won 7 first quarters this year. Of those 7, 4 of them have been by less than 3 points. So they're almost going down by 4 or 5 goals. It was in the first quarter. It was almost an expectation.
It's just what we do.
The energy was still there. But then almost when the domination continued into the second quarter, into the third quarter, and then people started to leave. We had a full house, 36,500. Game was sold out. And by the end of the game, I think there were 4,000 people left. And half of those 4,000 were Bulldogs fans. Energy was really low. Didn't look like we were ever in that game. Very few players can hold their head high. Roberts had a massive game today. He went about 80%, 36 touches and a goal, whatever. Goulden, the stats will say goal 27, but he was really awful today. Getting frustrated, wasn't running like his usual self, creating an option. Feels like the tag on Ed Richards wasn't successful at all.
Felt like a lot of frustration coming out today.
You know what it was? It was... Bulldogs are the one team in the competition that are probably the tallest forward line.
They are.
Because they have Darcy, Norton, Ugelhagen, Waitman plays really tall.
He does.
We have a big weakness playing against tall forward lines, and when Melican goes down really early in the game...
Rampy already out of the game.
Rampy was out of the game.
Injured.
Logan McDonald sent back, completely out of position, was playing way out of his depth, and it was just sort of set up to sort of never get back in our forward momentum. We never sort of could rebound off the back because whenever the ball went inside our forward 50, it was very rarely coming out.
There were two big... To me, there were 3 issues. Forward line, back line, and midfield. In the midfield, as you've talked about in our back line, we were being dominated height-wise and just giving up a lot of marks and a lot of advantageous plays for the Bulldogs through their height. In the midfield, they were just breaking through stoppage and getting out and getting it to the outside in space to running players. I think a huge part of that is James Rowbottom. His absence, and I think it showed us how important he is to our side and how unbalanced our midfield is when he's not there. When our midfield is just Warner, Heaney, Goulden, Parker being thrown in there.
Taylor Adams was shocking.
Yeah, but these guys who are all forward-minded... Rowbottom is so huge in our midfield for stopping them from breaking away, taking out the big movers inside and nullifying them. It's not just James Rowbottom. The fact that he's not there, it's the other players not stepping up. Chad Warner had his worst game of the season by quite a distance.
Yeah, I'll go through that later in the pyramid.
11 disposals, and they weren't good disposals. Yeah, played midfield the entire game and got 11 disposals. You don't really see that from any player. Even the more inexperienced or not as good midfielders in the league can rack up 20 touches pretty easily if they play a full game of midfield time. You'll talk more about that later, but lots of issues. A commentator said during the game, which you wouldn't have heard, that at about quarter time, he said, you know what, he's excited about this from a Swans perspective to see how they respond to the challenge. They didn't respond to the challenge. A huge part of that, as I'm going to talk about later, is that the Bulldogs were amazing today. They applied significant pressure and run the entire game, and they were relentless. They did not stop that.
You know what it was? And I was sitting next to a couple mates at the game, and it felt like they outnumbered us everywhere.
Yep.
As in, we had no answer going inside our forward 50 to their defence. It felt like we had 4 or 5 guys all spread out wherever the ball went, they had Lob waiting there, they had Jones waiting there.
Oh, Jones just killed us the entire game.
And Buku Khamis had a good game as well. And when they went forward, it felt like there were 3 or 4 guys in behind our defence every time. And it was really confusing to watch. It felt like they had 23, 24 guys on the field versus our 18. We got completely run over. Obviously, it's not a performance we wanted. I'll talk about the Premiership runway a bit later. It was really tough to watch, and sitting all alone at the end at the SCG with a bunch of Dogs fans.
Let's get into the top 5 players of the round. A difficult top 5 this week. I think a lot of guys that had really strong performances, and I don't know if there were that many that really stood out to me as locks in the top 5. My number 5 was Rowan Marshall. St Kilda, season's dead in if you're realistic. The season's dead. But it's great to see them playing some good footy. Obviously took a huge scalp against the Swans and have got another win the other week against West Coast, a huge win. And then this week, took apart Essendon, who I'll talk a bit more about later. But Rowan Marshall was absolutely phenomenal, was dominant. A goal, 26, 30 hit-outs. Don't know how many clearances, 8 clearances. He was phenomenal.
I like it. My number 5 was Tom Stewart. And I've seen another podcast, they're calling him the centre bounce defender. Because he was obviously getting tagged early on in the year and really struggling with that. So what he's done is he starts in the centre bounce and then plays the exact same role that was doing before the tag. And he doesn't get picked up. And he was able to just navigate against North Melbourne from one side of the ground to the other side of the ground, intercepting the ball, going to the centre bounce, getting clearances. He had 4 clearances, 32 disposals, 26 kicks. 18 of those possessions contested.
And you know what? I think Chris Scott is one of the only coaches in the league that would have the ingenuity and the confidence to go with something like that. Because that's not something you see. You see guys who start at half forward and then join the midfield to try to be an extra man in there. You never see someone start in the midfield.
Bounce, maybe win a clearance, don't even run forward with the ball. You actually become part of the wall.
Yeah, and you said to keep the numbers in the midfield, he's been taking guys like Brian Myers and Ollie Dempsey off the half-forward line and having them move into the midfield as Tom Stewart moves into the back line. It's really clever, and it's been a part of how Geelong got their win this week. My number four, I've pulled the Aiden Poswell special, which is I've gone Caleb Sarong and Andrew Brayshaw.
Oh, that's how you got it.
So I've squeezed them both in there. This joint selection is representative of a dominant Freo midfield season, but also their performance against West Coast this week. Brayshaw and Sarong just completely got away. Both got 12 and 14 score involvements respectively and 30 plus touches.
Freo team charging. I'm sure we're going to talk about that in the power rankings a little bit later.
We are.
My number 4, and you're probably going to have him a little bit high, but I had Nick Dacos at number 4. And because I've had my whole thing about they didn't have the greatest opposition to play against. And I was pretty big on it early on in the season that I wasn't going to pick players that played against North Melbourne. I don't like picking players that played against the bottom team. But I mean, I sort of had to recognise his performance today. I think, what did you say, he was on track for 68 disposals?
He was on track for 72 disposals, 40 contested possessions, 28 score involvements at quarter time.
I'll let you talk about it a little bit more because I have him at number 4, but I think he needed to have a mention.
At number 3, I've got Adam Treloar, who we mentioned that he got away from us, and I assume you'll have him in there.
I will.
So I'll just briefly say that he's had an amazing season. I think, as it stands right now, I 100% have him. I do like a rolling All-Australian team. We're nerds. We like to do all this sort of stuff. In my updated All-Australian team, I reckon he's absolutely in there.
100%.
He's been amazing.
My number 3 was Lachie Neale, and he's just sort of getting it done now. I don't know why people have stopped tagging him. It seems like it's sort of gone away. The Swans did a job on him last week, but still, again, he's putting up a crazy stat line: a goal, 35 disposals at 82%. Goal assist, 6 score involvements and 10 clearances.
Yeah.
I mean, but he does it every week, every second week. I mean, he's charging for the Brownlow.
Yeah, hot take. Lachie Neale's a pretty good player.
He is a pretty good player.
Yeah. At my number 2, I've got his teammate Dane Zorko, who I thought was...
I thought about doing a double.
Yeah, he was even better than Lachie Neale in my eyes this week. The stats just say 32 disposals with 28 kicks at 87% efficiency. But it was what his disposals did. He just launched so many attacks, was so destructive and precise with his kicking, and I just thought it was wonderful to watch.
I like it. At my number 2, I had Adam Treloar. Watching him today, I mean, he's 31 now and arguably having the best season of his career. If not, best or second best season of his career. We were often judgmental of his ball use and how effective he was with all of his touches. But he's just taken that to a whole different level in the last 10 to 12 weeks in the competition. The way he's able to find himself in the right position a lot of the time, pick up the ball, play it quickly. He's finding a lot of targets with his kicks now, whereas he wasn't maybe last season or the season before.
I'd say last season before, I viewed him in a similar way as I viewed Tim Taranto, which is a guy that is a great ball winner and provides a lot of energy in the stoppage and is great for pushing the ball forward, but doesn't display the best skill in terms of finding targets, in terms of making the right decision. He has improved that as he's gotten older, out of sight.
But I tell you what, Treloar and Richards have taken so much pressure off Bontempelli.
And
Liberatore, who I'm barely seeing in games because he just gets in, he does the hard work. But it's just allowing him to free up. Doesn't have to put the team on his back. And it's a scary sight for whoever has to play him in finals, assuming they make it.
Yeah. At number 1, I've got Nick Dacos. As much as it was a game against Richmond, and I definitely like putting someone in who played a big part in a pretty crucial game. I just think he was that good. I watched enough bit of the game. He was just that good that I had to put him at number 1. I'm sure a lot of people would have seen his performance. 42 with 18 contested and 12 score involvements, and a goal assist, 11 clearances. But he was so classy and got it done. Collingwood absolutely needed the win.
I cannot believe my number 1 is not on your list.
It's someone I would have considered.
He was part of a losing side. It's Harry Sheezel.
Oh, he was amazing, yeah.
And I don't often like putting guys in from losing sides. But let me just tell you this. North Melbourne had 16 scores. Harry Sheezel had 14 scoring
goals. Oh, no, I've made such a big mistake.
36 disposals and a goal. He was best on ground probably by an absolute mile. 2 goal assists. 16 scores his team had. He had 14 scoring
Wait, how do you have this much involvement and have only 1 clanger? Yeah.
He was absolutely unbelievable. Went at 80% as well.
With 25 contested
possessions. Yeah. How you missed him. I've missed the guys in the past, but I thought this was a shoe-in for a number 1, number 2 spot. 9 clearances, 4 inside 50s.
Hey, let's just talk about it now. There are so many patches in games where you see the future of North Melbourne. They're not quite able to put it together for 4 quarters against a team like Geelong that is desperate to get wins in their finals charge, but we are seeing patches of quite considerable periods, like full quarters or 20-minute stretches, where you're like, this is what North Melbourne's going to look like in 18 months, in 24 months, when they could really be a finals team.
100%, and they're still lacking down back a bit. We know Aiden Cole's not an exceptional defender. Griffin Lowe coming off a long-term injury. But if Comben and Larkey get going together, they just get one more key defender, they're really set up for the next few years. We'll move on to the next segment in hits and misses.
My miss. This seems to be a miss at this time of year, every single year. It's the annual downfall of Essendon Football Club. They bring up their fans' hopes every single year, and then it all just finds a way to come crashing down.
How are they 10th? When did that happen?
With the 4th worst percentage in the league. It must be truly difficult to be an Essendon fan, genuinely, just thinking about how I respond to things for the Swans. I don't know if I could do it. They had the easiest fixture in the AFL this season, as you talked about last week.
Yeah.
Looked like they were going to cruise to a top 4 spot. Have you seen that whole Ben Dixon rant?
I haven't.
The footy analyst, and he was talking about 7 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago about how Essendon were a lock to make the top 4. They have the easiest run. They're playing that sort of football.
I mean, I'll hold my hands up as well. I am a lock for the top 8.
Yeah.
So.
And what's happened? They've fallen out of the 8 with a percentage of 95.8. And have blown their easy fixture run. They might still make it, but
we're not saying they're not a chance.
They still. We have to mention the lack of a finals win for over 2 decades. And will it ever happen?
They were so set up. I know they weren't expected to finish in the top 8 this season.
Yeah.
But from where they were, the fixtures they had left to where they are now, with Freo, Gold Coast, Sydney, and Brisbane left, just don't really see them having a chance to push into the 8.
Yeah.
My miss is Adelaide, the game I was watching against Hawthorn. So Adelaide are also in their rebuild. They should be a year or 2 ahead of where Hawthorn are in their development. Adelaide were 2 in-game minutes from having their first goalless second half in their entire history. Deep that. 2 in-game minutes. And Taylor Walker kicked a goal, and Tilthorpe, I'm not too sure how to say it, kicked a goal as well in the final minute. But there were 2 minutes from having a goalless half. But yeah, they got absolutely schooled by a team who's a year or 2 behind them in the rebuild, and I'm just not really sure where Adelaide go from here. Obviously, they should have made finals last year of the post thing with the Swans.
Can I tell you, we have seen a team like Fremantle. They came 6th 2 years ago.
They did win a final that year, though.
And they won a final, and we were thinking that this is their time period. This is not a rebuild. This is now charging towards a premiership window. And they had that massive down year last year. But they're back up this year. You can just have bounces, but I don't think Adelaide have enough talent in their list the same way that Freo do currently.
They've been criticised a lot for how they've drafted.
Yeah, I don't think they have a lot of depth.
But yeah, speaking of which, Hawthorn are probably the most exciting team in it at the moment, but we might jump into that a little bit later.
My hit for this round is the Bulldogs. It's an obvious one. Their last 3 weeks have been as good as it gets. At the start of round 18, so 3 weeks ago, the Bulldogs fans would have looked at their next 3 fixtures were against the top 3 teams on the ladder at that time. Carlton, Geelong and Sydney. They've won all 3 of those games now and have earned a place in the top 8 and have a relatively easy run from here.
They've won them pretty convincingly as well.
Seriously.
The Carlton one, which is pretty close. They
Even so.
hammered Geelong and then hammered the Swans today.
Yep. Said earlier, the pressure and run today was really impressive, and that along with the dominance of Norton, Ugelhagen and Darcy, who seem to be working together quite nicely. And then you talk about sometimes just when everything's working for your team, just any move works. Chucking Rory Lobb down back and he's become an incredible intercept marking defender. Liam Jones freed up to just go and be a bit free like we see with Tom Stewart sometimes, and just go do whatever he wants, and he's dominating attacking players. So Bulldogs have it all going for them right now, and their fans should be very happy.
I like it. I wasn't too happy today, though. Brisbane are my hit.
Yeah.
And I think Brisbane Lions could possibly be the best team in it at the moment. And I mentioned earlier I was going to talk about the Premiership runway. And it's the most important thing is to play your best football 4 to 5 weeks leading into finals.
Do the Swans still have time?
Swans still have time.
Okay,
4
good.
games to go.
Okay, good.
The Brisbane Lions won 8 in a row. I think they're going to play 2 finals at least at the Gabba.
Which you think just has them there on grand final day, really?
Brisbane were 0-4. Now they're looking like going to solidify second with a couple of wins in the next few weeks. But I think the way they're playing now versus the way the Swans are playing, I'd probably put my money on Brisbane if I was a betting man.
In the words of Anthony Hudson, they were 0-6 and they're in the 8.
I can't argue that. We'll move to the next segment in the Footy Pyramid.
They were 0-6 and they're in the 8. Mark.
Now, I mentioned last week that it's getting harder to move people in and out and around in the pyramid just because you have to have a length of time of good performances to move up and a length of average performances to move down. Chad Warner's moved down 2 tiers and left the pyramid.
Yep.
You can't drop that sort of performance. I actually thought he was having a slightly better game until I realised I was looking at Corey Warner's stats. And that pretty much says it all. He had 11 touches, he's out of the pyramid. In the 5th tier, we have a new entrant. Is that the right word?
Sure.
Okay, he's someone that didn't play this week. Someone that you said should be in the pyramid, but wasn't. Harris Andrews is in the pyramid.
Deserved.
Probably should have been in it earlier. It's probably the best key defender in the competition. And Brisbane looks scary even without him. So.
Yep.
Be interesting. In the 5th tier as well, joining him, Tom Green holding a spot, Zach Butters holding a spot, Kernow holding a spot, and Zach Merritt moves down a tier into the 5th tier. Moving up into the 4th tier, Caleb Sarong holds a spot. Isaac Heaney had a decent game today. He holds a spot in the 4th tier. Harry Sheasel moves up a tier. And Adam Treloar moves up a tier.
Oh, it brings tears to the eyes seeing Harry Sheasel in the 4th tier.
Absolutely love it. In the 3rd tier, moving down, Errol Goulden moves down a tier. Nick Dacos holds his spot. And Sicily holds his spot. In the 2nd tier, Lockie Neal moves up a tier. Another awesome performance from Lockie. And Patrick Cripps moves down a tier. Didn't have a terrible game, but I think there's someone that's just edged him out of that top spot. That's Marcus Bontempelli. He didn't have an awesome game today, but he kicked an absolute ripper of a goal. Had enough touches to satisfy me putting him at number 1.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think I'd still have Cripps at number 1, but I'm liking a lot of him.
I know he's the Brownlow favourite, but we're here for this is a form pyramid, and he's had an awesome few weeks.
Let's go into the power rankings. So we're just going to block Cheetah Duck here. So we start off with Richmond in 18th, West Coast in 17th, and North in 16th. These teams holding their spots. Now we have Adelaide in 15th. Is that down a spot or maintained?
Down a spot.
Yeah. So as you talked about earlier, not playing well at all. Don't know how much depth they have in their list, and a lot of poor performances this year. Next up, down a spot is Gold Coast.
First home loss. Which, to be fair, it did feel like there were more Brisbane supporters in the crowd than there were Gold Coast supporters. Whether home ground advantage is a thing, it felt like they were outnumbered.
Yeah, it's like when we went to the Sydney Derby at the GWS home ground. It was 80% Swans fans at least.
It felt like that, but 80% Brisbane fans.
Wow. And then next up we have St Kilda in 13th, who are really holding their heads high to end the year.
Interesting team. Did we both? I think we might have both had them in the 8.
Start
of the year.
I definitely had them. I remember I had them in 6th place, and I felt really strongly about it. I just thought another year under Ross Lyon's belt. They made the 8 last year. There's no reason they shouldn't just be even better.
Embrace that defensive mindset a bit too much.
You could not score early in the year, and it's come to haunt them. Next up, we have Essendon in 12th, dropping a few spots. Hey,
they came from 9th.
Yeah, so 3 spots dropped. Everything we talked about earlier, that they just cannot get it going. It's another year that they've shown their fans a lot of hope until late in the year they've dropped out of finals. They can still make it. We're talking about it like they're stuck in 15th or something. They still can make finals easily, but they're not playing the footy that's going to do it. Next up, we have Collingwood, who get a really crucial win, still in the hunt. Unlikely, but still in the hunt. Next up in 10th is Melbourne, who got a really tough loss to GWS. It was a cracker.
They were up by quite a bit in that game as well.
It was a cracker. Don't know how we haven't talked about it so far, but it was a great game. Up 27 at one point, and then GWS sort of took them apart in the second half. A lot of the outside players getting away. Whitfield and Callaghan had an insane amount of touches. So Melbourne sit in 10th and are still clinging on to finals hope. Next up is Port Adelaide, who had a great game against Carlton. Absolutely huge. And so I think they've gone up 1 spot here from last week. And it wasn't a game where they needed their midfield stars to have humongous statistical games like we have seen in some of their wins. It was just a really consistent team-wide performance where they just brought the pressure and made it really difficult for Carlton.
It's a big comeback as well, because at one point Carlton were up by, I think, 32 points.
Yep, 32. You're completely right, and it was a great game to watch, and an awesome second half. I know that there's a crazy stat about Ken Hinkley at the MCG and how successful he is, and also it's worth noting that Port Adelaide.
Was it Ken Hinkley at Marvel? It was Marvel,
Ken Hinkley at Marvel, sorry.
11 of the last 12 wins or something.
And it was also the fact that Ken Hinkley gets them 10 plus wins every year. It's not an easy thing. An easy thing to do.
Faces a lot of criticism as well.
Pretty much every year that he's been there, they've got 10 plus wins, and no other team can really say that since the time that Ken Hinkley started. Next up is Geelong in 8th, and we know with Geelong that they're probably going to get enough wins to make finals. They get this win against North Melbourne and sit in the 8 right now.
Looking at Adelaide next week at home. So
I'm going to say something that I'll probably come to regret. Out of all the teams, I reckon they'll probably make the 8. If I would want to play any team fighting for finals right now, I'd want to play Geelong in the first round of finals.
Yeah.
I don't think they have a strong enough midfield, even with Dangerfield there, to win a final, unless everything goes right. I really don't think that they're as strong as a usual Geelong finals team this year. Next up, we have Carlton.
Although, in saying that, we still wouldn't be surprised if they walked their way into some sort of prelim final.
I would be surprised. That's the controversial opinion I'm making. I've got Carlton in 7th.
Dropping 3 spots.
Dropping 3 spots, and a big part of that is that the chasing pack for top 4 spots had an amazing week. And Carlton, it was a bad time to lose because some of the teams that I'm about to mention really stepped up. GWS, who are in contention for that top 4 spot still, but just as easily could miss the 8.
Peaking at the right time
At the right time, as we've talked about. 4 wins in a row. What we expected from them at the start of the year, which is that they'll find the form at the right time.
Awesome getting against Hawthorn next week, by the way.
Absolutely huge. Absolutely huge. GWS, who I think are the most talented team in the league, possibly. Maybe between them and the other Sydney team. Against Hawthorn, one of the form teams of the competition. Maybe the form. Behind Brisbane.
Both needing wins in that game.
Absolutely. Next up, we have the Western Bulldogs in 5th, who jump a couple spots here. And everything I talked about earlier with 3 huge scalps in a row, they deserve a double jump here.
Rory Love's the best key defender in the game.
Next up, a minute ago it was Harris Andrews. Next up, we got Fremantle in 4th, who just continue to truck along. I think this is the same spot they were in last week.
Moved up a spot.
They've moved up a spot.
Yeah.
Next up is Hawthorn, who move up a spot.
Closer and closer to finals. They're edging towards finals.
You know they're in the... Oh no, they're coming 9th now. They're coming 9th and they're tied points-wise.
9th percentage.
9th due to percentage, but there's 7 teams which have broken away a bit in terms... Or they're They're a win behind 7th.
I mean, yeah, if results go their way next week, they could be jumping. If they win nicely, maybe in 5th.
Yeah.
So
I reckon it's fair to say everyone is barracking for Hawthorn right now, unless you're a team fighting for a top 8
sitting
spot.
between 8th and looking about 4th. Between 8th and 4th, every other team's barracking for them.
They're an incredibly fun team to watch, and they were again today. Next up, and this is the first time in a long time, I think maybe since round 4 or 5, that the Sydney Swans have not been in first place. He's got the Swans jersey.
I didn't want to bring it up for the podcast.
But we got to talk about it in comparison to Brisbane Lions, who sit at 1.
This is a form and vibes power rankings.
Yeah, it sort of looks like when the Swans won 10 in a row, that sort of dominance that we were looking at, that reliability is what we're seeing with the Brisbane Lions right now. And the Swans are going through the sort of patch that Brisbane started the year with. I think the Swans have the highest ceiling in the competition if they can put it all together.
They hopefully get a few people back. We're not sure how long Milliken's injured for.
Yeah, but they have serious injuries right now, and the first quarter troubles are completely unrelated to the injuries. And so there's a lot to work on right now. And to be honest, if you want to win a grand final, you're going to have to be a team that's good enough to deal with some injuries. So they're going to have to sort out something. Not sure what, but I trust John Longmire.
Those fourth quarters as well. First quarters as well.
Yeah. So good luck to John Longmire, because there's a lot going on at the Sydney Swans camp right now. But congratulations to the Brisbane Lions, who have jumped them into first place.
Top of the power rankings. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you all on the next one.